Good morning. I am Diver Dave, and somehow I'm back. We were actually in the middle of a podcast, and I had a major power blip here in the dive lab and sort of rebooted everything. So that's a little sketch for sure. I'll have to look into that. Anyway, I'm Diver Dave. This is 613 Dive. I'm back in the dive lab, and we're going to try this all over again, and that means I've still got coffee. So for those that don't know, or for those who are new to 613 Dive, I am a private PADI master scuba diver trainer, and I reside in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and I do most of my diving in the Great St. Lawrence River, which is between sort of Cornwall and Kingston, Ontario, in the St. Lawrence River, which is an awesome diving playground. So for those that are local, I did want to say that we have new Centene Park tokens now available. And for those that don't know what a Centene Park token is or what Centene Park is a really, really cool park in Brockville, Ontario. It is a underwater sculpture park, so we have about 30 to 40 statues. And if you buy a $10 token, which I will put up here on the second camera for a sec, and you can see they come in a nice pink and blue design this year. They're $10 each. You can find them at most local dive shops. And they get you some extended parking and also the code to the washrooms that are on site. So very, very handy to have. So $10. The proceeds go to Save Ontario Shipwrecks, which is a non-for-profit organization, and SOS is responsible for sort of maintaining all of our awesome wreck sites across Ontario. So a really, really good cause. And I believe a partial bit of that fund, or partial portion of that fund, is donated or given back to the city of Brockville. So that's awesome. Podcast technical topics. I mean, I had this on the list of things to talk about because yesterday I was dealing with some audio sync issues, and now this morning I'm dealing with a power blip issue. So going to have to sort of figure all of that out. All that to say is setting up a podcast I thought would be a lot easier, and it's really not that easy. I started this down probably back last September, and I started accumulating the gear and slowly getting it working. And then I obviously wanted to see if I could get it all working here in the dive lab, which is a very, very small space. It'll still be interesting to see how this all works in the summertime when I start to get really busy diving. But all of that to say is it's been quite the technical journey. Now, I have a bit of a technical background. I come from the IT side, but even then, it's been a bit of a challenging learning all the different tech. From an editing perspective, I did just make the jump from Adobe Premiere Pro over to CapCut PC. I know I had a couple questions. People reached out to me to say, what do I do my edits in? I have recently switched over to CapCut PC. I was pretty comfortable in Adobe Premiere. I was by no means an expert, but it's something that I had used in the past. But I found it a little rigid in terms of some of the social media stuff I was trying to get done. So my son Reese, who is also doing a fair bit of video editing at the moment, suggested I try CapCut PC, and CapCut PC is actually quite nice. Ended up paying for the Pro version, which is a lot cheaper than Adobe Premiere, and so I've used it for the last, I think, 2 to 3 videos. So, and overall, the experience has been very good. From a environment perspective, by the way, if you see me looking around, I've got a laptop on my left that runs all of the broadcast studio software, and then I have a monitor that sits up just above the camera that I can look at a list. Because without the list, I think you're just kind of rambling. And even then, you might still be rambling. Dive topics. The next thing I wanted to talk about is, and I've spent a fair bit of time on some of the videos asking if you're a new diver. And if you're a new diver, one of the things that you probably need to start thinking about building up is a dive toolkit. And your dive toolbox is going to grow as you grow as a diver. There's no doubt about it. But you have to start somewhere. And I picked this up at the Canada Diving Supply the other day. I'll put it on camera, and it's a very, very nice little affordable, we'll get the focus, O-ring kit that has a bit of a keychain holder and a nice O-ring pick. And this is like $14, $15. And it's a great place to start because it has a bunch of different size O-rings, and which might save you on a charter dive or a local shore dive for you and your buddy. I always have one of these in my dive toolbox and have found it to be very useful and have used it multiple times. So for $15, hard to go wrong. Throw it in the dive toolbox. There you go. The next question I wanted to ask, and I did a small short on this one, is why don't we teach more recreational divers to carry a spare mask? It's not in any of the standards that we teach in the recreational side, other than the self-reliant course. It is part of the self-reliant course in terms of the requirements. But the self-reliant course is a little bit further in your recreational dive journey. And I get that maybe not all divers want to sort of get to that level. But at the very least, I feel like we should pull out the spare mask concept out of that course and put it into our normal recreational diving. A spare mask doesn't really take up much space. I could easily fit this into the right side of my BCD jacket, or if I'm wearing things like tech shorts, it would be very handy to have, because if you think about it, if I have an out of air scenario, my buddy can help. If I have, there's a bunch of different scenarios where my buddy can help. But a spare mask or a broken mask strap and I've lost my mask, that is one where the buddy probably cannot help that much. If I'm at 100 feet and my mask strap breaks and now I've lost my mask because I couldn't grab it in time and it's into the silt. At this point, I'm at 100 feet. Maybe my buddy was off exploring. Maybe they're 10, 20 feet away. How do I even get their attention? What does that scenario look like? Does this turn into a very critical incident quickly? How do I get myself to the point where I can actually perform a safe ascent? And so having a spare mask in the pocket, I just feel like doesn't take up a lot of space, but really kind of reduces the risk of that scenario. Because if I had the spare mask, it's a pretty simple reach and deploy and clear, and I could probably just continue diving. I can use the spare mask to find my main mask, put it in my pocket, and we continue the dive. So it's just something to think about. If you're a recreational diver looking to sort of improve and reduce the risk, I would really consider, how do you put a spare mask into your dive kit while you're diving? And the next thing I'll talk about on my own front is side mount diving. Side mount diving was something that I picked up last year, and I really, really enjoyed learning it. I have, I think, maybe 60, 70 side mount dives now from last year's experience. I dove mostly with a pair of aluminum 80s, and that was great. I'm glad I learned with aluminum 80s, but now I would really like to move into a set of steel low pressure 85. So I managed to pick up a pair of those last season. I haven't done anything with them yet, but it is definitely something I'm going to work on most likely this spring, is in terms of getting those rigged up so that I can try and see what a side mount setup feels like with low pressure 85s. I see a lot of side mount divers who are really good, and that seems to be the setup that they use. From a training perspective, let's see. Training perspective, I got a fair bit of things on my plate. Sounds like I've got a gas blender course starting with Canada Diving Supply. So Jeff over at Canada Diving Supply, if you're hearing this, let's get that course started. I want to get the gas blender course done. That'll allow me to sort of blend my own O2 mixes and go from there. And then the biggest course I'm probably taking on in terms of learning to be an instructor is the Liberty CCR Instructor Mod 1. We did our orientation last Sunday. We have 3 students we get to work with, so shout out to Ariane, Philip, and David. And then I also have 2 other instructors I'm working with, which is Luke and Lucas, so that's going to be a ton of fun. And of course, I get to learn from Mr. Steph Senecal. I call him the Dive Wizard, but he's just a good friend. And anytime I get an opportunity to learn from someone like Steph is just an absolute blessing. So can't wait to continue doing that course. Sounds like we're going to do most of that course in late May. And at the same time that we are doing the instructor course, I am also starting to do my I guess, Mod 2, which is a Tech 60 course on the Liberty CCR, which means this will be my first sort of taste test into trimix diving. I guess they will call this non-hypoxic because it is a breathable mix, 16% and up. And again, I'll be doing that with my buddy Luke and, of course, Mr. Steph Senecal. So that is going to be a pretty amazing course because it means I get to go a little deeper. And it also means that potentially in August, we get to go do some really cool wreck diving in Lake Huron down in the Great Lakes. So that is going to be a pretty cool experience. And what else do I have up here? The biggest thing I will be working on as a recreational instructor this year is building out a little bit more of a robust, self-reliant program. There is going to be most likely it's going to be a sort of a multi-day course where you can work with me in a one-on-one basis. So if you have some interest in being a self-reliant diver, but working in a private instructor type of situation, I would say reach out and let's chat about it. You will walk away with a PADI self-reliance certification for sure, but I really want to spend more time specifically on the equipment setup because what I see from a lot of divers who are diving with a pony tank is the rigging on the pony tank is just not that great. You end up with a diver who has this pony tank and it's almost like swinging, a foot or two below them like a pendulum. And it just doesn't look comfortable. I kind of started that way myself, and I just don't feel like that is, I just don't feel like that really sort of makes you enjoy diving with a pony tank. A pony tank really should be what I would call high and tight under your left arm so that there's very little movement. And so while you're diving, it just becomes sort of part of the dive kit, and you don't even really feel it. And if it disappears in your dive kit, perfect, because then you just sort of get used to it. But if it's always swinging below you and hitting your leg or whatever it is, then I feel like you probably won't enjoy having or diving with a pony. And at some point you may go, I don't think I need it. But so self-reliant program is something I want to work on and looking forward to that one. So I'll be building that out. So reach out if you think you have some interest because I would definitely definitely like to chat with anyone interested in learning about being a self-reliant diver. So that's all we have on the plate today. And we're still working through some technical issues and working through even being comfortable on a podcast live scenario. It's a lot easier to do a podcast, record it all, and then chop it up on the edit floor and then put something out that's polished. This is by no means polished, and it's going to be a learning experience, but I think it's a good one to learn. So thanks for watching, and look forward to the next one. Cheers.